Hello and welcome back to the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, Mr. Fight and Talk, joined as always by the fantastic co-host of the show, the eloquent analyst sporting the Fighting Talk beanie. How are we doing, Prath? All good?
I'm doing good, my man. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. And as always, in the casual corner, we have George. How are we doing, George?
All good, mate. Thank you. All good.
Good man, good man. So you've both woken up from last night's somewhat of a snooze fest of an UFC on ABC card. You know, sometimes the UFC puts on cards that are not as stacked, and I feel like we've been very, very spoiled over the past couple of months, and in the coming months, we are getting very, very spoiled as well with the quality of cards that we are having put on. If we did have Darren Till on the main event, I feel like it would have changed the atmosphere a little bit, especially for the UK European fans. But nevertheless, we had a few good fights on the card. And the first one I want to speak about is Mike Perry. What's going on with Mike Perry? What is he doing? Prath, what did you take away from the fight? Because I feel like he's not in it anymore. You know, we spoke a little bit about this yesterday, and he used to be the up and comer. He was the prospect. You know, he was the guy. But now he's lost 7 out of his last 10 fights. So where do we see him going from here after his loss last night to Rodriguez?
I don't know what number of fights he has left on his contract, but I'm assuming that Dana White, he's got 1 fight left on his contract. I'm assuming that either Dana cuts him or he fights his last fight, and if he loses, he's out of there. What a shock! Well, I won't say he's not a disappointment, but just a disappointing fight for him. Like again, he just seemed like he was like 7 steps behind Daniel Rodriguez. Like Daniel Rodriguez just seemed to hurt him with every shot. And every time he hit him, he kind of shelled up a little bit or moved back quite a lot. And it wasn't the Mike Perry we're used to seeing. Mike Perry that we're used to seeing is getting in there and going back and forth. And this was one of those occasions where we really saw the kind of age of battle, if you will, kind of wear on Mike Perry. And we've seen here, like, look, he's had a couple of really, really close wars, and he's been fighting savages. Nico Price, you know, he's fighting people that are like going through wars, doing finishes all the time, winning post-fight awards. And there's a reason why Mike Perry is now in the stage that he is, and it's purely based off of the amount of, you know, wars he's had. And I think that's really, really shown here. And it was tough to watch, man. It was really tough to watch because I was a really, really massive Mike Perry fan when he first came in. I loved the attitude, the energy, and he was a savage in there as well. Like, he was taking hits and he was coming back and winning these crazy fights in the 3rd round. Like, I'm pretty sure the first 3 fights he had consecutive 3rd round finishes, and that was what I thought was going to be the hallmark of Mike Perry. And now he's a floating punching bag now, and that's really, really sad to see. So where does Mike Perry go from here? I hate to say it's either Bellator or PFL, it looks like. And I don't want to speak for any company, but I kind of, you could just see the dollar signs go off in Scott Coker's eyes as the referee was reading out that decision. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Mike Perry, I'm sad, man. I'm just sad.
He obviously took a lot of damage yesterday as well. It was very evident that he broke his nose very early in the fight. He also had a hematoma on the left side of his face. And it just seemed every shot that he was taking, his head was flying back. And he's almost become a little bit more of a circus act than an actual performer, like an actual fighter. Yeah. But George, do you think he would be more suited to somewhere like bare knuckle, for instance, because of his kind of brawling, fighting style? Or do you think he would take even more damage? Because we've seen a lot on social media over the past kind of year, 18 months. He's doing things that, you know, inverted commas, the average person wouldn't really go out and do. Do you think that kind of repetitive beats to the head are putting him in a poor mental state? George, what do you take?
Well, the first thing about Mike Perry that I always think of is I think of a guy who actually is quite talented, and for whatever reason, you can't, you know, unless you know the bloke, you can't make the assumption, but he's just not fulfilling what his actual talent, I don't think. And I've never understood, for a couple of years now, he's had this like ridiculous corner team. You know, my biggest thing for him is we've got 1 fight left in your contract. You need to win. Like, there's no option now. You've got to win to stay in the UFC. If you win and you win well, then you probably will get another contract. Probably. They'll keep you in there and they'll keep you fighting. But I do not understand why he does not, just for the sake of it, go off and find a team, try and find a home somewhere. Like, your corner is invaluable in combat sport. It's like a band of brothers. They're there to protect you. They're there to help you. In any that's inside the octagon and outside. And for me, he clearly needs that at this point in his life. I know that they've had this silly back and forth thing, Darren Till, but obviously he put out last night that, like, come to England. I'll find somewhere for you to live and come and train at Team Carbon in Liverpool. And I know it's been jokingly, but I think he was deadly serious about that last night. So he said, look, just come here and we'll help you. We'll try and help you get back into the winning column and trying to win fights. But I just think that there's something outside of the cage in his personal life that he's just not bothered. He doesn't care. And perhaps moving to a PFL or a bare knuckle is maybe where he heads next. But like Prav said, I'm just filled with sadness, really, because I just think we'll look back on Mike Perry and think of a guy who could have been way better than he was. And I actually think Mike Perry will look at himself potentially at some point and go, do you know what? I really wish I hadn't messed around here. And I really wish I'd given it a real good crack, because I could have been way better than actually I've shown to be. I just feel deflated when I think of Mike Perry, because I think of a guy who could be way better than he actually is.
Yeah, I agree, man. And someone else on the card that made me feel deflated, and I never thought I'd say these words in modern day times, is Nunes got submitted in the first round. Obviously, now her name is Nina Nunes, obviously. Not Nina Rantsarov. She got submitted by Mackenzie Dern yesterday in a fantastic performance from Mackenzie Dern. Prath, you're the jiu-jitsu guy, man. Tell me what you saw of the performance from Dern, and where does Nina go from here? She's obviously got a lot of losses, and having such a superstar of a wife that's done so well in her MMA career, you're always going to feel like, they're not a power couple, for instance. They're a one-sided power couple, and they're Batman and Robin. Do you know what I mean? But, what did you take away from the performance that she had yesterday, and where do you see her going in the future, obviously, with racking up all these losses?
Yeah, I think with Nina, it comes down to just kind of, I don't think that she necessarily wants to be on the same level as Amanda or show that she's on the same level as Amanda, but I think she considers herself a competitive fighter, and hence why she's kind of going along here, and maybe a point to prove with having a child and then coming back. You see a lot of these guys like Mackenzie Dern, for instance, who comes back after having a child and is able to have a successful career as seen here. But just a tough matchup. I think Mackenzie Dern's a tough matchup for any of these guys. ADCC world champion, gold medalist, multiple time gold medalist. As soon as she gets you down, there is a very, very, very slim chance you're getting out of it and you're not getting submitted. And that is exactly what went down here. Mackenzie Dern implemented the game that she knew. She said it. It's not like she's making any kind of, she's not making a joke about what she's coming in. She's coming in to take you down and submit you. And that is exactly what she did. And I think, despite the skill set of many of the strawweight fighters, I think Mackenzie Dern, with a little bit of strength, a little bit of technique, and a little bit of finesse, she's going to be able to take all of these guys down and do exactly what she wants to do. And I think that's exactly why Mackenzie Dern even jumped into mixed martial arts. You see a lot of the incredible jiu-jitsu fighters across the world, the Gary Tonin, Gary Tonen's not a good example because he is a fighter now. But, Gordon Ryan and Andre Galvao, you see that they compete very little in mixed martial arts, but their submission credentials are second to none. So it's a very brave step for her to step outside of jiu-jitsu and compete in mixed martial arts, and she's doing incredibly well. She's aligned herself with a great team. She's got Jason Perillo, the guys down in California at the Ruka Performance Center that are training her to be the best fighter that she can be. And, there's definitely been improvements, and you can see in her last couple of fights, she comes out more confident in her takedowns, more confident. And then once the fighters hit the floor, Mackenzie Dern is in her world. And so I think the big thing was, striking defense, and the wrestling, and you've seen her like in the last couple of fights, her improvements in those areas. So she is a force to be reckoned. She was never not a force to be reckoned with, but now with more confidence, more time, Daniel Cormier said a famous line back in the day when he beat I believe he beat Patrick Cummins, which was, he called out John Jones and said, you better fight me soon because I'm getting better every single time. And that's exactly what's going on here with Mackenzie Dern. Every time out, she's getting better and better and better and more confident, more comfortable in the spotlight, in the limelight, with the lights on bright and the crowd kind of, the crowd there and things of this nature. So I expect her to be a champion in the next year or so. I think even someone as strong as Wei Li, if she isn't able to avoid the takedown, once she's on the ground, it's game over. And I think that's going to be the same for a lot of these ladies here at strawweight.
Yeah, definitely. George, what did you think about the fight?
It was easy work. Simple as that.
Easy work.
But the thing is, though, right? Like, she's edging dangerously close to a title, Mackenzie Dern now. And Praf's just said it as well. What I was going to say, I can't think of anybody really that once they get to the floor, who's gonna stop her from like submitting them. Like, it'll happen to Wei Li, happen to Rose, it'll happen Marina Rodriguez. All these people. Like, if she gets them there, they're going to end up in serious trouble. So, yeah, I agree. I think in the next kind of 18 months, 2 years, that I think that she'll be a UFC champion. Like, but yeah, last night, for the fake, as I like to call her, the fake Brazilian, she it was true. Easy work. It was so easy. It was like, and I actually didn't doubt it for a second as well. I just thought at some point Ansarov, Nunes will end up on the floor and she'll get submitted, and sure enough, it happened within 5 minutes. So yeah, easy work.
Definitely, man, definitely. And that wasn't the only submission we saw yesterday. We saw a couple of kind of bizarre rear naked chokes / bulldog chokes. Prath, you're going to go into a little bit about that because we had two on the card yesterday. We obviously had Sam Alvey get choked out in a very, very bizarre way. No hooks or anything. But tell me a little bit about what happened to smiling Sam Alvey. Obviously, we spoke about him last week and the amount of fights that he's had. He's very much a veteran at 34 as well in the UFC. But what did you take away from his performance last night and obviously his unfortunate submission?
Sam Alvey reminds me of George. You don't know if he's 30 or if he's 60. And that is just in road mileage. What a crazy fight for Julian Marquez as well, and Sam Alvey. We'll just brush past that. It was a great fight while it lasted. And yeah, very, very similar to the submission that Impa Kasanganay got on the early prelims. It was kind of like a no hooks rear naked choke, and we were actually, me and Connor yesterday were on Twitter Spaces, and we were discussing some stuff with the guys there, and the guys were kind of going back and forth on whether it was a bulldog choke or a rear naked choke. And I think when it comes to the two, a bulldog choke, you kind of have to have all of your kind of your body and your momentum at the head and above the arms. And what you found here is that he was kind of in a seated position, and the rear naked choke was applied, but there was no hooks put in. So he was kind of able to kind of kneel behind his back, have the choke in, and kind of just lay him to sleep, like a peaceful lay him to sleep. Okay, well, you're asleep now, goodbye. And that was the same thing that happened with Impa. But Impa, hit him with a big shot, kind of stumbled him, and then went for that submission in a crazy scramble. I don't know if you saw, like, he was, he kind of hit him, kind of put him on, kind of dazed him a little bit, and then tried to take him down, kind of flew over him somehow, and then eventually got the takedown again and just took the back position there and choked him out. So yeah, very, very bizarre rear naked choke. But I feel like I've seen these in the last couple of years in the UFC, just from positions and scrambles. You never know where you'll land in a scramble. And I think some people really take advantage of those little minute kind of spaces to lock these in. And the one thing I'll say about both Julian and Impa is that it looks like their squeeze is insanely tight, because the control that you have to hold someone in that position, because obviously from that position you don't have control of the body at that point. So the guy could effectively like kind of explode out of it if he really, you know, like if he decided to twist and explode out of it. There are other dangers that could be there, but that's a way of getting out of that. And what you found there is that they kind of how can I say, they like kind of submitted to the fact that they were already in that position. And then, you know, once it happened, the tap, like Sasha Palatnikov was ready to tap before he kind of went out. He kind of went out a little bit, but he tapped before that went down. Same thing with Sam Alvey. He kind of almost went out and then tapped right just before he was going there. So incredible submission. But obviously the stand up for both of these guys was kind of the key to getting to that point, you know, and both had very similar rounds as well. It was kind of like a very non-exciting first round, back and forth exchanges, nothing to kind of sing home about, but, you know, had their moments in both sides. Sam Alvey just kind of dialing back the clock here as well. Every time we see him, it's weird. It's almost like you expect him to just not have a chance, but he goes in there and gives a good fight and a good account of himself. And that's exactly why, you know, he will continue to lose. But, you know, I think the UFC will continue to put him in fights because he's an exciting guy. And I wouldn't say he's a gatekeeper, because I think there are more credentialed fighters that are gatekeepers, but he is definitely one of those guys that you have to beat to then start fighting those fringe 15 to 20 guys and above that. So big win for Julian Marquez. You know, another strange call out in the post fight, as Julian Marquez is kind of being led to believe here. I also kind of pointed out that Julian Marquez kind of looks a little bit like a baby Andrei Arlovsky, which that was the vibes he was kind of giving me. Even in his fighting style, it was kind of giving me those same vibes as well. So yeah, great win for both guys, and a really awesome, unique submission that you don't see too often.
From like the, you know, obviously I've never practiced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but from my perspective of the both those submissions, it was almost like a mixed martial arts version of like, right, I've got him on the ground, almost like you'd do in like the playground at school. You'd just kind of grab the neck and quickly like pull him backwards as much as possible. But the squeeze that Marquez had on Alvey was just insanely tight. And it was more on the wrist as well, wasn't it? Usually when you see a rear naked choke, the chin is more into the forearm. Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Top of the forearm, in between the elbow, which is normally where you'd see the rear naked choke. But the one yesterday was very much almost straight across the wrist. So I guess you'd get more traction because you could pull your entire arm backwards instead of having to pull your elbow forwards, if that makes sense. Would I be right in believing?
That does that. No, you're making exact sense, man. And I would say that most people kind of opt to go for a gable grip over going over the full bicep control when you're in that position. When you got the hooks in, you can kind of go it a little bit deeper with the wrist, with the bicep control. And what you found there is that, yeah, it was kind of like more wrist forearm that he was getting. So exactly what you said, the squeeze must have just been absolutely insane, because there are, you know, the wrist isn't necessarily the meatiest part of the arm. And that's what you kind of want to achieve there. You want to get him on the forearm, the meaty part of the forearm, and that to be the kind of driver of the Adam's apple. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. But that's kind of what you would see in and I got to agree, it's a mixed martial arts position because of the scrambling, because of the striking. You wouldn't really get that mostly in jiu-jitsu. And I think that jiu-jitsu fighters would rather go for the control of the back rather than just trying to get the submission in. Because I think the control, because, you know, even if he was to get out of that, you want to be able to control the position. If he was to just scramble out of that, then you're both standing up again. There's no other control apart from the head itself. So yeah, very much a mixed martial arts rear naked choke.
Yeah, nice one, man. Nice one. Now I'm the eloquent analyst.
Hey, man, don't take my title.
But go on, George.
I'll just go quickly back to being very casual about this. We've wrapped up really lovely. Julian Marquez so far, he's got the walkout of the year so far. He's got that thing with Miley Cyrus going on. He's walked out to party in the USA. Well, like, that was good. I laughed a lot when I saw that. So yeah. Walkout of the year so far, Julian Marquez. No,
it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And there was another fighter on the card that you were hyping up a little bit when we were talking about this last week, which was Gamrot, right? The Polish power, the secondary Polish power coming out against Holtzman. Holtzman looked huge for some reason. I just think he was a lot more built and a lot more defined, stood next to Gamrot, but Gamrot had an absolutely fantastic performance with his kind of jabbing and touching of the lower leg and then diving straight in with the low ankle pick as well. But George, you were super high on this guy when we were talking last week. So were you happy with his performance, and where do you see him going next?
The Gamrot is like, I said this in the preview, he's a silent guy who's just going to creep up this division. He's just going to surprise people as he goes along. This is a guy who's barely lost, and the one loss he has had was really quite controversial, last year. So he's very, very, very talented. Probably one of Europe's best talents, to be honest. You don't become a 2-division champion in, KSW for no reason. And I think last night was the kind of, I said on the preview show, this was an opportunity against Scott Holtzman to have the kind of like coming out party, to kind of introduce yourself to the UFC crowd and go, I'm a serious contender, or I'm a rising prospect, shall I say, in this, in the UFC. I saw this morning as well that after Blachowicz beat Adesanya, he was talking about Gamrot and was saying how he felt that Gamrot would become a UFC champion in the next couple of years. And I think that's probably a little bit of a tall order at the moment for him, but don't be surprised that kind of 27, 28 years old, which Gamrot is, I think, that he continues to develop over the next couple of years and he finds himself comfortably inside that top 10. So yeah, no, he's a fantastic talent. And last night was kind of the first show of that. He's got way more to offer. The stuff that I saw in KSW of Gamrot was seriously good. And they produced some great talent over the years. So yeah, definitely the coming out party started for Gamrot for sure.
And just staying on the European fighters, go ahead, Prav.
I just wanted to also point out, obviously Gamrot came off of the loss that he just had. It looks like he changed his team as well. And he training in ATT, Mike Brown. Yes. Just before he was about to get into the cage, I saw that Joanna had tweeted in support of him as well. Mm-hmm. So it looks like, he's going to have a really, really good corner going forward. And, very, very smart guys. They've produced so many world champions at that facility that, he's in the right hands.
Definitely, and it was that's a great point. It was a great move by him, and I've seen as well that he's been training a lot with Jorge Masvidal as well.
Masvidal.
Yeah, he's been training with the top guys, so that's definitely a good move by Gamrot.
Absolutely, and sticking on European fighters, obviously we had Jack Shaw fighting yesterday as well on the early prelims, and he had a fantastic performance yesterday. Prath, he was super wrestle heavy. Obviously the commentators were talking about the UK and Europe in particular, particularly the UK, not having the best wrestling background, but clearly Wales, there's something in the water, right? With how they're performing and how they're wrestling. There's a lot of good wrestlers in Wales. But what did you take away from his performance? And what's next for this kid? He's young, he's hungry. Obviously, we had Arnold Allen as well, which we'll get to. But both of these guys are absolute murderers out there.
Yeah. Jack Shaw, just a great British prospect as well. Another guy that we've really, really got high hopes for. Believe he was a Cage Warriors champion, and is someone that, is one of those bright British prospects that we have going at the moment. Very, very much a wrestling heavy game. I think he's recognized some of the deficiencies in just kind of coming in and trying to scrap with these guys, and knowing that he has good grappling, good takedowns, and good control, I think, on the ground as well. Somehow the judges gave one of the judges gave the fight to Hunter Azure, which was beyond crap.
I was equally as baffled as you, man. This is why we shouldn't have boxing referees reffing MMA. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, just it goes back to that accountability point that we would love to just know, like, hey, maybe you don't have to answer, but like at least just kind of let us know what went into making that decision. What was Hunter Azure doing in the fight that made you believe he won 2 rounds in that? And I just think like the control of Jack Shaw was the key point of that entire fight, and for them to give him the 2 rounds, like I literally watched the fight back like 2 or 3 times now, and there's no spot in any of the 3 rounds that I thought that Hunter, really capitalized and made much of an impression on me in those rounds. So really, really cool to see Jack Shaw kind of get up there, get in there and get fights in these times where it's very difficult for the British fighters and the international fighters to get fights at the moment. It's great to see him get in there and compete and get some time in the octagon as well. I don't know if I would say he's ready for the real top echelon of the bantamweight division. You've got some real killers in that bantamweight division. And I'd love to see him kind of another guy take a little bit of a slower rise to the top here. You know, there's no rush on him. He's still, he's still relatively young as well. He's 26 years old. He's got, at least 3-4 years till he hits his prime. And then from there onwards, he can really develop into being, a top bantamweight fighter as well. So high hopes for him. He seemed composed in there. He seemed calm, which is great. Like you want to see these guys over, I don't know how many fights he's had in the UFC now. I want to say like 1, 2 to 3 fights in the UFC now. So yeah, third fight in the UFC. So like, you want them to start feeling more comfortable in there, more calm. On the walk, he didn't look nervous. He didn't look like he was, really stressing the fact that he was about to get into a fist fight. And that for me shows that, that control over his emotions and his discipline before he gets in there. So that's what I want to see in my British prospects. And he is definitely one of my top British prospects. Big things for him. And I think it's going to take him some time. I'm not saying in the next year or so. I think it's going to take, 2 to 3 years for him to really, elevate to a level where he feels like he is the top guy in that division. And I don't know if that takes him moving to a different camp or anything like that to really like raise his skill level. I think, the Welsh gyms are doing great at the moment. And for that kind of strategy, they do great. You look at Brett Johns, right? Brett Johns is another Welsh fighter that's great at wrestling, great at grappling. I don't know if they train together. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't train together. And I would love to see those guys work together and reach the top. Teamwork makes the dream work. I know it's an individual sport, but I think, while we have these great British prospects, they're both in bantamweight as well. So that might be a bit sticky, but I think these guys need to work together to, we got a leg down compared to most of these American fighters who are wrestlers and have been wrestlers since they're kids. So let's work together to be better so that we can, when we compete against these other guys across the world, our skill level is right there with them. And it's not because they have it when they're young. It's because we work damn hard to be as good a grappler as they are.
Absolutely. And it's just whether the ref actually sees that they're, doing their wrestling transitions properly. They're working well on the ground and stuff. We had a few kind of very strange split decisions yesterday and a few decisions where I felt could have gone either way. George, I'd love to hear your feedback on this, but we obviously had Saldana versus Griffin, which I believe was a very, very close fight. I believe that could have gone either way. I probably wouldn't have given it to Saldana. We have Makdessi, who won a split decision over Bahamondes as well. But where do you see the reffing going after these kind of fights yesterday that equally could have gone either way, but I think the majority of people would have seen it going the other way?
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? I mean, I suppose when fights are really close, you understand the split decision. Like we've sat and watched fights and gone, cool, that's really close. And there's been rounds as well where you've looked at the rounds and gone, that's really close. And so you can understand how refs can end up on split decisions. But the Jack Shaw one is a perfect example. For the life of me, I do not understand how Hunter Azur won the fight. What two rounds did he win? I thought he won the second round, but 1 and 3 were clearly Jack Shaw's rounds. And so, I mean, I don't know what you do with referees, like, going forwards. Like, is there like an internal investigation behind the scenes where you simply ask them, like, how did you see this and where? But that won't make a difference because, there's this kind of like referees kind of fan club where they kind of all band together and help each other out, which is cool. I get it. That's how, you protect your own and all that. But it's really hard to and what you don't want to see is you don't want to see guys get to the top. They've worked all their life to get to the top, and then poor refereeing rips away their title because they've had it, because of poor refereeing. That's the last thing you want to see. So I'm really stuck as to where you go with these poor refereeing, to be honest. I'm really stuck with it.
I've got the perfect idea. You remember in high school, when in school and stuff, when you're in maths, right? And they say, right, here's your bit of paper. I want you to do this equation and I want to see your answer. So you give the answer. Doesn't matter if the answer is right or wrong. They want to see your workings. They're like, right, show me how you got there. You do know what I mean? So I want to see how they got there. I don't want to see just a 10-9. I want some notes next to it that says like 10-9 because of this, and this. I think that would be good. And then release that to the public and say like, these are the reasons why I gave this a 10-9. What do you think?
Yeah, just a quick thing from me as well is like I feel like a lot of these things go, we look again at the spotlight should really be on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they're the people, they're the gatekeepers. They hold the keys to these to the judges and their opinions. And I feel like, the one or two times we may have heard like a judge's reasoning behind a fight is because of the scrutiny that they faced from giving a very poor decision. And I think it's something that the UFC need to work with the commissions. You look at Mark Ratner, the VP of Regulatory Affairs, I believe is the title. He needs to be working with Bob Bennett to understand what needs to be done to either have more culpability or to at least just get different judges, different judges that are boxing, different judges that are for mixed martial arts, and what that looks like. But I think for me, it feels like it's too much of a faff for them. And I think that shouldn't be the reason why these things shouldn't be implemented. So it's one of those things where it's going to be very difficult, because I think Bob Bennett, generally, if you look at his character, he seems like someone that just is very much there to protect his people, right? He's protecting, the other board members that work on the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and he's protecting the judges and the referees from scrutiny because they are picked by him, right? So at the end of the day, if they make a bad decision, it's reflected poorly on him. So why is he going to go out of his way to be like, okay, well, my judge did bad and this is why he did bad? So it's a tough one, man. It's a really, really tough one, because there's not a lot that we can really do. We just have to sit back and go, okay, that's just another poor decision chalked up to, Derek Clearly or Sal D'Amato or whoever it is that ends up judging the fight. And I think that, UFC should be kind of keeping like a little notebook in their back pocket going, okay, Derek Clearly, one poor decision, this guy, one poor decision, and just stacking those up and going, okay, well, at the end of the year, we've seen here that Sal D'Amato is the guy has made the most poor split decisions happen, and then what we can do from there. But it's just, we could talk about this all day, and I feel like I could give my silly quarterback opinion about what should happen here in the UFC and judging overall. But it's one of those things that needs an overhaul, and I think the fighters are calling for it. The other, the agents, the managers are the ones that are having to feel the fury of their fighters after a really poor decision, have to go there and go, okay, why did I lose that fight? I felt like I was winning, and the judges screwed them. But then you've got Dana. The juxtaposition is strange, because you've got Dana then going, well, don't leave the fight in the judges' hands. And it's like, well, not all fights can be ended. And that's also like a discussion that goes, kind of leads on from there. But yeah, it looks like George has got a really good point here. So I'm going to throw it over to him.
I was just going to say was that all these people just know where their bread's buttered, don't they? That's the bottom line. So they all just keep hush and quiet. But definitely, there's been this conversation moving away from the mixed martial arts world into the boxing world quickly in this country about poor judging in boxing, and how will fighters from different parts of the world feel confident coming to the UK and getting a fair decision, because there haven't been in recent times. Yeah. It's going to get to a point where fighters will say, I don't trust the Nevada State Athletic Commission to get a fair result, and I don't feel confident that if I come to Las Vegas to fight, I'll get what I deserve. And that is a really sticky and difficult position for the UFC to be stuck in, because going to Nevada State Athletic Commission won't be an easy conversation, and they won't want to hear that their refereeing's bad. So there needs to be some kind of change. I quite like your idea, to be fair, Connor. I think it's a pretty good one, to be fair. If you can clearly see how they've scored it, then at that point, then at least there's open dialogue about it, at least.
Absolutely, man.
Open scoring, guys. Open scoring.
Open scoring and detailed scoring as well, with they won the first round because of the wrestling positions, because of the top control, etc., etc. But back onto last night, there was a guy that did not need to even see the judges, and a guy that was laying on the floor not knowing if there was judges even in the building, which was Jurgen Castro versus Danho. Danho obviously coming back off of a 5-year layoff and absolutely cleaning up Jurgen Castro, who I thought was looking very, very good. But that's the thing with heavyweights. All you need is one hit to the temple and you are... He literally looked like, them waving inflatable tube men. It was like someone turned off the blower and then he just gently sank into whatever position he was in. Obviously, Prath, me and you, we were watching it live, and it was the leg snap back as well that we saw last week or the week before with Francis Ngannou and Stipe, where you just think, wow, I'm glad you're knocked out for this, because that probably really, really hurt on the fallback. And then we saw another follow-up shot. Mike Beltran was very, very close to the action as well. So he managed to completely push off Danho before there was too much damage to be taken. But this heavyweight division it seems to be making a lot more noise, and these fighters are really coming through, and they're coming through thick and fast, as well as in the 205 division. But Prath, Jurgen Castro obviously took a big loss there, and he's been on the back end of a few losses in his career in the past couple of years. But big win for Danho after 5 years, right?
Thick and fast is a good way of summing up the heavyweight division. It's really awesome to see these heavyweights coming out here, and it was one of those kind of forgotten divisions of yesteryear. You know, when you look back in the, you have the Cain Velasquez dominated area and things like that, but the heavyweights have never really been, massively competitive. It's always just been like kind of one hitter killers. And so it's really good to see a little bit more variety in the heavyweights that are coming up here. Jurgen De Castro's had a couple of wins, couple of losses here in the heavyweight division. I don't think that, in the heavyweight division, the wins and losses kind of mean as much, because of the fact that you've got that one shot kill knockout power that all of these guys seem to have. Well, not all of them seem to have, they all definitely have. And what we saw here is another, maybe not a household name for people to recognize, but someone that is a UFC heavyweight. It's taken a couple of years out from the sport, looks like, and has come back on a big win here. And I got to agree with you. He didn't look as great at the first couple of minutes of the fight. It seemed like Jurgen De Castro was kind of able to control a lot of the pace and land his shots. And in typical fashion, he kind of goes in for a shot, misses the second shot, gets clipped, and falls into the dark realm, if you will. And that's all she wrote. And another, a big win for Georges Danho, someone that looks like he's a great prospect, someone who was able to kind of maybe shake off a little bit of that octagon rust in that first couple of minutes, able to land his shot and get out of there. Didn't look like he took a big amount of damage from Jurgen De Castro. So maybe one of those things where, 5 years out of the game, big knockout win in the first round. Let's get you back in there. Let's get you fighting. Maybe, let's see how he does against one of these top prospects. We were talking about, who would we like to see Tom Aspinall fight? And I think that'd be a great fight for him, just to get him another win in the octagon, or get him another fight in the octagon against someone that's tough. I want to see these guys get slow builds. I saw Ariel was kind of looking at matching Chris Daukaus and Tom Aspinall up. And I just think that would kill one of those two really bright contenders there. So I'd love to see him take a couple of more fights before he really gets into those top guys. I think Chris Daukaus is ready to fight one of those, top 10 guys. I wouldn't say he's not going to be fighting Derek Lewis or any of those guys, but let's see him fight, I'm trying to think who's in the top 10, but someone at 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that, I think would be a good little step up in competition for Chris Daukaus. But where I see Georges Danho go next is maybe a quick turnaround against someone like a Tom Aspinall would be good, but I wouldn't be surprised if they match him up against another, potentially like a European heavyweight, oh my God, I forget his name, Marcin Tybura, like a Marcin Tybura type heavyweight fighter. Like, that's what I expect him to see next. But I guess it also depends on who's available and who's ready to go and things of that nature as well. So quick fight, great knockout, one of those knockouts that you'll really remember. I think it's one of those ones that you'll see in those when you talk about this card. I think that's going to be the knockout that stood out the most for me. So yeah, very much. Georges Danho, stand up.
Just quickly on the heavyweight thing as well. At the moment, for the first time in a little while, this is no disrespect to Stipe, but everyone is looking at heavyweights at the moment, because now you've got Francis Ngannou as champion. All the light is starting to shine on heavyweights. And so if you start to make a bit of a play at heavyweight, people will pay attention to you at the moment. So when you think about young guys like Daukaus and Aspinall, this is huge now, because Ngannou has attracted everyone's attention onto the heavyweights because of that, the kind of guy that he is. And so this is a huge opportunity for all of those guys beneath to kind of fire their way up towards the champion. and people will pay attention to you because everyone will be like, oh, who's got in there with a Francis Ngannou? Who's going in there with a Derek Lewis? Who's going in there with a John Jones potentially? You know, these are, you know, they're big fights, and heavyweights are truly back at the moment. This is definitely a division over the next couple of years where a lot of eyes and attention will be on for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And it's about time the heavyweights and the 205s kind of had this resurgence. Obviously, we had John Jones, we had the kind of backwards and forwards with Stipe and DC and stuff like that over the past couple of years as well. And I feel like these trilogies just take so long in mixed martial arts, especially when you have injuries. You have cornea injuries like Stipe had that kind of put you out for 9 months. And it's like, you know, we need to be turning around these fighters a little bit quicker, especially with a one-punch knockout like it was yesterday for Jurgen de Castro. He can bounce back fairly quickly because I feel like he didn't take that much damage. Although he took one major blow, it was lights out and he was done. So you could see him back within, I think a knockout's like 35 or 45 days, I believe it's 30 or 45 days before you can get back in there. But you can always see these guys get back in. And it's unfortunate that that kind of knockout would stand out. These kind of guys are not ranked, and it was lower down on the card. Obviously, moving into the co-main and the main event, which we saw 2 decisions as well. Arnold Allen looked fantastic against Super Sadiq Youssef as well, but it was unfortunate that we didn't see more action in those co-mains and main event. But on the Arnold Allen versus Sadiq Youssef, it was a good back and forward. But Prath, what did you take away from that fight? And, you know, how did it make you feel in Arnold Allen as well, and how his career is going to move forward?
Interesting that you asked me how it made me feel. It made me feel very strange. It was a very strange fight. And I really wanted Arnold Allen to really come out here and blow the doors off of Sadiq Youssef. Again, we love our British fighters. We want to see them do well. We want to see them get those finishes. Tough fight for both guys, I think, as well. And I think it's going to be one of those fights that both gentlemen look back on and with a little bit of frustration, maybe didn't pull the trigger as much as they wanted to on either side. But, you know, just more control from Arnold Allen. And I think that's what won him this fight here. Sadiq Youssef is tough as nails, man. I tell you, he's got a great chin on him as well, man. I think that was maybe his first, Sadiq Youssef's first loss, or one of his first losses in the UFC. So, yeah, I think it's his first loss in the UFC. So he's a guy that's just another, how can I say? I think both guys have the potential to be real good top 10 fighters here. And I think this isn't the first time that these two gentlemen will meet. I think they will meet somewhere further down the line where the stakes are a little bit higher and they're a bit more higher ranked. And I think this was just another fight that shows that both guys are not really ready for the top 5-10 guy fighters in their division. Arnold Allen, you know, even though he's on an incredible win streak, I know that would usually grant him fighting a top fighter, but a lot of these fights are quite lackluster decisions. And it hurts me to say that because I think he is a fantastic fighter. I love his, you know, he comes from a great team, TriStar. He fights very reminiscent of Rory McDonald, which is something I was discussing with you, Connor, yesterday. The stance, the way that he uses the elbows on the exits to avoid the hooks, very reminiscent of Rory McDonald and that TriStar gym. So yeah, it made me feel very, very weird. I don't know how weirdly I answered that question, but Sadiq Youssef as well is another guy that I think with just another year or two of real stiff competition, he's going to be able to raise his game so high. You can see it's there for both guys as well. You can see it's there. There's glimpses of just magic, but it's glimpses. It's very, very little glimpses. And I want to see them really shine. And whether that means that they both have to take a little bit of a step down in competition, I think that might be something that is worthwhile to both guys, because it really will then boost their morale up when they go into those top 15, top 10 fighters. So for both guys, yeah, it did make me kind of feel like they're not ready for the real top of the division, but you know, the foundations are there, the glimpses are there. So get them a fight where they can really show everything that they're about. You know, I think Arnold Allen was talking afterwards saying, you know, he's disappointed he didn't get a knockout there or a finish there.
Mhm.
But, you know, these things happen in these fights. You can never really control whether you're going to get the finish or not. And you know, Sadiq Youssef is the other dance partner there who's tough and can take those shots. And he was hanging in there. He took a couple real big shots there from Arnold Allen and vice versa as well. Arnold Allen took quite a few big shots from Sadiq Youssef and hung in there as well. So there's no doubt that these guys are, you know, tough guys in the division. Featherweight is a stacked division as well. Like, that's the other thing as well. When you get to those real high ranked fighters, you're not going to see the tendency to hold back as much. And I think when you look at someone like a Yair Rodriguez, he isn't afraid to throw side kicks to your body, to your head, to your legs, move around, circle, punches, kicks, elbows. Like, he's throwing all of those. And what you saw there in those in the fight with Arnold Allen and Sadiq Youssef is that when they fight someone like a Yair Rodriguez who's so active, they're going to struggle because they're going to be waiting all night long for something to happen that is just not happening. And they're going to end up getting peppered with shots. They're either going to get knocked out or they're going to lose a decision to one of these guys who is just willing to put that little bit extra in, take it from the second gear and put it into the third gear, and just show that they have that next level. So yeah, that kind of encompasses my thoughts there.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. George, what did you see in the
Frustrated.
It was a frustrating night for both guys, for Arnold Allen and for Sadiq Youssef.
Yeah.
I'm maybe a bit more high on Arnold Allen than both you guys. I actually thought he was pretty impressive last night. I just thought that he nullified Sadiq Youssef completely. Like, so the impression I've had of Sadiq Youssef is that he's this very heavy hitting featherweight, and if anything, the guy who looked like he was going to get knocked out last night was Sadiq Youssef. I think Arnold Allen's frustration was that he had him down twice and that he didn't finish him either time. For me, though, Arnold Allen is in this very weird position now that he's better than everyone below him and that he's probably not quite good enough yet about people above him. And what I mean is, I think he's ranked 10th. Now, people like Jeremy Stevens, who are ranked 7, he'll beat Jeremy Stevens. Like, we don't need to worry about that. But number 6 is Calvin Kattar, and anyone from Calvin Kattar upwards is going to be a problem for him at the moment. But what do? Do you let him fight other people below him who he'll beat and he'll beat comfortably, or do you say to him, look, you're on an 8-fight win streak, that's the best in the division, and perhaps you do deserve a chance against someone like a Calvin Kattar. It's a tough fight. It's a very tough fight, but maybe that's where they go with Arnold Allen. They have no choice but to give him that kind of fight because, you know, but I said it on the preview show, and I'll say it again. He is Leon Edwards in a different weight class. Yeah. He'll win fights all the time, but he'll never get the big fight because he's not that character. He's not gonna call people out, and he's just stuck in this weird world at the moment. Arnold Allen. I think he's super talented. Last night showed it against another top prospect. For me, he controlled that all the way through. There were times where Youssef had opportunities, but it was always Arnold Allen's fight. But where he goes next is the serious question. He beats most people, you know, but that top 5 or 6 guys are just so good. You know, Holloway, Zabit, Yair, they are world class on a different planet at the moment. And Arnold Allen just isn't quite there. He's on the flight from his current planet to that planet, but he just hasn't quite made it. And that's how I kind of view him at the moment. The last thing I want to say on it as well is, I don't know if you saw it, but the respect that Sadiq Youssef showed after the fight is what mixed martial arts is all about. Absolutely. It's what it's all about. Yeah. Them talking about like how the fight went, him going over to Arnold Allen's dad and saying, "You've raised a great son." It is completely what the sport is about. And fair play, because he's been through a rough couple of years, Sadiq Youssef, which I found out, you know, both his brothers being killed in the last couple of years. You know, the fact he's even there is quite amazing, to be honest. So, yeah, no, respect to both of them. You know, it wasn't quite what we were hoping for, but, you know, still, you know, fair play for getting inside there and giving it a good crack. But, yeah, Arnold Allen, it's really interesting to see where he goes next.
Yeah.
Exactly as you say, with Arnold Allen kind of being in limbo almost between being too good for a lot of people and almost not good enough, but he's going to have a few of those kind of testing bouts in front of him to see where he falls in the division. Is almost what we had yesterday with Kevin Holland. Go ahead.
I was just saying, maybe he needs that fight against a top 5 guy. Maybe just put him in there. Just see what happens. if he goes in there and loses, but he's very competitive, you know that he can maybe stand with these guys. If he goes in there and gets annihilated, you know that he's not quite ready. Maybe you just have to risk it and put him in there and see what happens.
Exactly.
Nobody believed that TJ Dillashaw would beat Renan Barão until they put him in there against Renan Barão, and he rose to the occasion. So very much, again, despite my commentary, I will say that I'm a big fan of Arnold Allen, and I do want to see him fight those top guys. So yeah, I agree.
And, following on from what you both just mentioned, we obviously had the same thing with Kevin Holland yesterday with regards to him kind of going in and facing someone that is better than him in Brunson that we saw kind of 2 weeks ago. And then exactly the same thing yesterday with Marvin Vettori, just someone that's just that little bit better than him and that can take the fight into different places that obviously Kevin Holland can't go to at the moment. I saw that he did an interview, I believe this morning or yesterday after the fight, and said, I'm going to go away and I'm just going to practice on my wrestling now, because clearly that's what everyone wants to do. And he obviously had such a huge 2020 that we kind of all had these huge high hopes for him. George, especially, you were kind of like super high on Kevin Holland. And now we've seen him take a couple of losses. And obviously Brunson's written the blueprint of how to beat this guy, which is wrestle heavy and dominate the person from the top. But I felt like Marvin Vettori was throwing everything at Kevin Holland as well. He obviously had a big cut over his left eye, I believe it was, which just goes to show that Marvin Vettori is clearly a lot better than Kevin Holland. And we should never have really seen that fight. In retrospect, we shouldn't have seen those guys in there together. It should have been Darren Till. And as I said at the beginning of the show, that would have been a more competitive fight to finish on a main event. But Prath, where do you see Kevin Holland going after this? And George, if you think about where Vettori's going after this as well. But Prath, where do you see Kevin Holland going after back-to-back losses? And obviously, he pulled back the trash talk yesterday as well, and he still caught the L.
Yeah. Again, I think I said this in the other, the Brunson Holland breakdown, which is, I don't think that the talk necessarily, him talking a lot necessarily detracted from him in the fight. I think that was just his skill set against Derek Brunson's skill set. I think Derek Brunson, he just knew that, he was just getting out grappled here by Derek Brunson, and he wanted to have some fun with it. And I think that was kind of the main reason why he was talking as much as he did in that fight. Where does he go next? Funnily enough, I remember reading a tweet from a great mixed martial arts Twitter follow. I don't know if you guys know him, Kaposa, Grabka Hitman. I don't know if you are familiar with this account, but he is a legend of MMA Twitter. And he actually suggested what I think everyone wants to happen, which is let's send Kevin Holland to Dagestan for 9 months. Let's just leave him there. No phone. Let's leave him there. He's got to have no phone. He's gonna walk out into the middle of the desert and run into Khabib, who's going to be like, Kevin is real gangster, and then take him over to his quarters in Dagestan and teach him how to wrestle for 9 months. And then at that point, we'll send a plane out to there to grab him and bring him back home. I think that's literally what he needs to do. And to see him go any further in the division, he is going to need at least like a solid year of takedown defense. Like, go to a gym where you're spending like you don't need to spend every single day of your life doing takedown defense, but you need to spend a majority of your time doing takedown defense and getting wrestled to the ground by bears. Hence why we should send him to Dagestan. Where does he go from here? I feel like now, this really... it will drop him down in the division naturally. He will take a lower position in the rankings, which means that he is now going to be what I kind of define as the setup fight for the next kind of contender of the middleweight division. Whoever is considered the next guy up. That could be a fringe top 15, top 20 guy. I don't know what that looks like or who that looks like. But I feel like that's going to be the next fight for Kevin Holland, which is going to be what, quote unquote, springboard fight up until 185. And I think the thing for me that I would actually really like to see more so than anything, obviously making a joke about sending him to Dagestan, I'd love to see him get great takedown defense. That doesn't necessarily mean he needs to go to Dagestan. That would be a great place for you to learn how to do takedown defense. But, they've got the ATTs, you've got out in Phoenix, the lab, these gyms which are very grapple heavy that you can send them out.
Just quickly, I was going to mention this, but Extreme Couture in Las Vegas, Eric Nixick and Dan Ige, who train there, both said to Kevin Holland, they tweeted last night saying, come to us and we'll help you with your takedown defense. So why not stay in Vegas and go to them?
Yeah, that's a great, that's a great shout. He lives in, I believe he's a California guy, which means that, that's close quarters for him to get to Vegas and do that. So if that's something that works out for him, I think that would be a great idea. And the second thing that I would love to see out of Kevin Holland is let's potentially look at moving Kevin Holland down to 170. That was something that was discussed before. And I'd love to see him that's a new fresh coat of paint on Kevin Holland. It allows him to it doesn't allow him to bounce back. And I think, middleweight is something that he will revisit later down the line and look and go, okay, well, I've had my time here. Let's go back up to middleweight and finish what I started over there. But for right now, what I would love to see more so than anything, the takedown defense or anything like that, I'd love to see him go down to welterweight. And that doesn't, again, that out of the fire into the pan, I believe is the phrase there, because you've got a hell of a lot of welterweight wrestlers there that are ready to bear hug you to the ground. And just as bad as you did against Derek Brunson, who is stronger, probably, I would assume, than a lot of the 170 guys, and Marvin Vettori, who is going to be a lot stronger than a lot of the 170 guys here. So a mixture of both is my kind of plan here for Kevin Holland moving forward. A mixture of going to a camp where it's going to really help his takedown defense. I think that Vegas Extreme Couture gym is a really good shout, close to home for him as well, and he's able to kind of go back and forth there, as well as move down to 170. Whether that's a nutrition change, whether that means that the preparation for the weight cut is a little bit longer, I think that he will then have a massive advantage over those guys at welterweight in size and reach. He had a reach advantage over a lot of these middleweight fighters. So if he goes down, he's going to be an Anderson Silva type figure at welterweight. Very, very skinny, very long, very, very technical, striking on the outside. And I think he's going to really be able to style on a lot of these welterweights. I think an amazing fight at that weight class is him against Wonderboy. I think I'd love to see that fight. I think their styles are just so, it just matches up so lovely. And I think watching Stephen Thompson on his rise when he was fighting these other karate guys, I think that's just kind of like a throwback to that fight, those kind of days for him as well. So those are the two things I'd like to see. Sorry, I kind of waffled there.
No, I completely agree with you, man. I completely agree with you. I'm just having a look at the 170 rankings and a kind of like the 10 to 15 mark here. If he was to, be put up against someone like Li Jingliang, who would, the Leech, that would be an amazing fight, I feel, for Kevin Holland at 170. And I think that'd be a fantastic bout. Obviously, Bilal Muhammad as well, sitting on the fringe of the top 15.
He said already. He said after the Brunson fight that he was thinking. He talked about welterweight, and he said, "I'd love to fight Bilal Muhammad."
Yeah,
I actually think this is the perfect thing. He can get down to 170 easily. This is what he should be doing. He should go down there. He's a real problem at welterweight. A real problem.
Yeah, and both fights help both fighters as well. It helps Kevin Holland come back from from 2 losses, dominant losses, and it also shine a little bit of a spotlight on whoever he fights at the welterweight division. A Li Jingliang, Bilal Muhammad just coming off of his first main event. That's I wouldn't say that's a 5-round fight. That's maybe like a headliner of the prelims on a numbered card. Mm-hmm. I think those are the spots that you'll really see Kevin Holland in, and hopefully elevating some other name. And having a really tough fight, like Li Jingliang, as tough as they come, right? So I think that's still a tough fight for him, but it will allow Li Jingliang to kind of elevate himself off of that name. But also, alternatively, if Holland wins, that's a great bounce back win against a top 15, tough as nails welterweight contender.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of movement to be made in the division for him, in either division. Yeah. And we always see him coming in underweight as well, which would just lean so heavily towards him cutting down, because if people are cutting to get to 185, as we've said 1,000 times, they're sitting at 205, 210, and then they're super draining themselves. Vettori looked huge last night, huge and jacked. The turtle head was straight out. But George, now that you've had some time to think about it, where do you think Vettori goes next? I'm just looking at the rankings here, and it's looking very, very tight at the top of the division.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Vettori, because we won't know. They might fight one day. But I truly believe last night, if that was Darren Till at the other side of the octagon, he would have won last night, Darren Till. I just think that he would have found his striking would have been too much for Vettori. But that's for another day. He wants a title fight. He's not going to get a title fight. Although he might be the only guy at the moment, unless Whittaker puts on a hell of a show next Saturday, which I think he will do against Gastelum.
Yeah.
I think that that's the way the UFC will go. I don't understand like how just sitting on Kevin Holland for 25 minutes means that you can then get a title fight. There's no way Adesanya is going to say that he deserves it. He's already promised that Vettori would never fight him in a title fight. So convincing the UFC trying to get that signed I just don't see it. I guess he fights another top contender, maybe someone, obviously someone in the top 5. He wanted, he obviously got Darren Till. That's not going to happen. He did call out Paulo Costa after his Jack Hermansson win. Mm-hmm. Maybe Paulo Costa is where they go in this scenario, potentially. But the title fight is off the question. And Whittaker, what thing I realised this week was I was doing some research, is that New Zealand and Australia have created a travel corridor. So both people from those countries are able to freely travel between the two at the moment. So if Whittaker does look great, I don't understand why you wouldn't do Adesanya against Whittaker in Australia or New Zealand. You'd get loads of fans. It'd be great for both of them. Rob Whittaker wants that rematch. He can downplay it all he wants. He wants that rematch, and Adesanya probably would take it because that's the best option for him at the moment. So for Vettori, I guess you look at a Cannonier. I guess you look at a Paulo Costa. I guess you look at those kind of guys and say to him, look, you need something a bit more impressive than, wrestling the number 10 guy. You can't get a title fight on that. So I think there's probably at least one more fight before a title shot comes his way.
Prath, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say Jared Cannonier. Jared Cannonier was my kind of option there. I think, I don't know what's going on with Paulo Costa. I know he pulled out of the last fight he was scheduled for as well. I believe he's got something like long-term COVID or something like that as well. So who knows when we'll see him back. So yeah, for me, Jared Cannonier would probably be the next one up, unless Darren Till can bounce back in time. The collarbone injury, as scary as it sounds, I've heard it doesn't have a huge amount of turnaround time on the rehabilitation for that. So potentially we might see Darren Till rebooked against Marvin Vettori. We might see Marvin Vettori against a Jared Cannonier. I would love to see Darren Till against Jared Cannonier if any other fight is going down, or Darren Till versus Paulo Costa out of all of those kind of fights, if you will.
Having seen Vettori last night, and I don't think he'll change much, I don't want to see the Till fight anymore. I just think Till pieces him up. I really do. I just think that Till, I know he's had a few losses over the last year or two, but I still think that his striking is too good for Vettori. I don't think Vettori can handle it. I'd rather see Till now against Cannonier. I agree with you. I think that's a better fight now. Much more interesting. It provides way more questions about Darren Till than Vettori does, in my opinion.
And we know that Adesanya is hunting for a Darren Till fight, which is weird, right? The champion's hunting for a particular fighter. What other fight really sets Darren Till up for success here outside of fighting, any of these other guys? I really don't see him fighting, Darren Till fighting Uriah Hall and then getting a title shot off of it. I want to see Darren Till fight a guy that is within that top 5. And I think Jared Cannonier would be the best one for that. So yeah, Jared Cannonier versus Darren Till. Sign me up, guys.
Also, as well, after Adesanya beat Paulo Costa in September, he said he wanted Jared Cannonier, providing he beat Rob Whittaker. You've got two guys that Adesanya has both said he wants to fight. So why not just pitch them against one another? It makes the most sense, really. If whoever comes through that, fine, give them the title shot if you want. But for me personally, I'm expecting something pretty special next Saturday from Rob Whittaker, and I really think that he should be the next title fight for Adesanya in this division. Vettori might get lost in all of this. He could get lost in this, Vettori.
But I think having a performance like that will make him get lost in the shuffle here, because people that's a forgettable performance. That's a performance that the fans look at and go, well, why do we want to see him if he's just going to go into a title fight with Adesanya and just hold him against the fence, or take him down and control him the entire time? Like, we don't want to see that as fan. I'm not saying that I don't. I'm just saying as fans in general, they generally wouldn't want to see that. And I think having a performance like that is indicative of not being in Dana's good books, I want to say, which is a bit of a weird thing to say as a thing that's out there, but Dana's good books count for a lot. And I think Dana looks at the guys that aren't, he loves finishers. He loves guys that come in there and he loves Sean O'Malley, right? Diverse striking, always going forward, throwing big combinations and big strikes, right? He loves that kind of fighter. Marvin Vettori isn't the guy that Dana White is like kicking down the door to be like, oh my God, I want you to fight Adesanya right now because that fight will make history. It won't. And people know exactly what Vettori brings to the game now. So when that eventual match may happen, but at some point, I believe, there's you can't deny someone, if he goes in and grapples the hell out of Paulo Costa and holds him down and smashes him for 5 rounds and takes that number 2 spot, it'll get to a point where Adesanya runs out of contenders and he has to fight Vettori, but people will know what Vettori brings. And that will be like one of those, it'll be like, kind of like Yoel Romero-esque, we expect it to be a good fight and then it's just going in and being a stinker.
The other thing as well is, right, that Vettori claims, and he absolutely has, since the first fight of Adesanya, he's got way better. But
I agree.
He then doesn't mention that Adesanya's got way better as well. And it's like, do you honestly believe, like, hand on heart, that Vettori beats Adesanya? Like, he beats him every day of the week and twice on a Sunday. It's I just don't get it. I truly believe he gets lost in the pack here, Vettori. Yeah. I think there's other guys.
Vettori went in there yesterday with a game plan to beat Holland. And that game plan was to go very wrestle heavy. And he came out with the W. So, saying that he wasn't an exciting fighter, fair enough. You know what? It wasn't an overly exciting bout, but he was still showing us a very well-rounded skill set by cutting Holland up. He wasn't only laying on him as we saw Brunson doing like a couple of weeks ago. He was moving. He was trying to transition. He was constantly applying pressure. And I felt like it was a lot more of an exciting wrestling bout than Brunson was putting on. And if you face Adesanya, for instance, we saw Blachowicz wrestle Adesanya to the ground and maintain top position and apply pressure. So if we were to see Marvin Vettori against Adesanya, we would see a very wrestle-heavy game plan, because that is what has beaten Adesanya in the past. Obviously, he's only lost once to this style of fighting, but he's still lost. And could that be his kryptonite moving forward? Being a fighter, you have to apply your fight IQ and go in there with a game plan to beat the person in front of you. It doesn't matter how you beat them, as long as you walk away with that W.
I just think what the problem is, though, here, if you look at the examples of the 2 Adesanya ones, is that Adesanya going up to fight Blachowicz was sellable by the UFC because it was easy trying to become a 2-weight champion. I don't know how the UFC sells Marvin Vettori in a title fight at the moment. That's my problem. And that's what the UFC wants. They want to be able to make big money and big title fights. And currently, and I don't disagree with you, he went in there last night and got the job done. He got the job done, and it was done emphatically. There was no question about it. Kevin Holland was well out of his depth last night. But how they sell Vettori in that scenario at the moment in a title fight, I don't know. And that's why I believe he'll miss out, because they'll just think the Whittaker one's easy to sell. If Till comes back in the next 8 weeks and beats a Cannonier or whoever, that's easier to sell. And that's the problem I think he's got. It's the same for people like Leon Edwards. How Vettori's gonna have to do way more work to get to the title fight. He's gonna have to back the UFC into a corner where they can't say no anymore. And at the moment, the UFC have other options, I think, and that's his problem.
It'll be a rematch. The actual first fight was more competitive. So Adesanya beat Robert Whittaker. He knocked him out. He never knocked out Vettori, did he? He beat him on decision.
No.
He beat Paulo Costa. He knocked out Paulo Costa. He didn't knock Vettori out when they fought by decision. So if you're doing MMA maths, then
I don't know if
the fight with
I don't know if I've
option.
I don't know if our viewers can tell, but I think Connor might be a fan of Vettori here.
I'm not a fan of anyone. I just want to see two people fight that deserve to fight. Do you know what I mean? So looking at it from an MMA maths point of view, Adesanya had, a very good performance against Vettori, but Vettori had a very good performance against Adesanya the first time. So maybe it would be even more competitive the next time.
No,
I don't disagree.
I don't disagree with you, but it's just not the way they're going to go. They're not going to go. If Whittaker absolutely nails Gastelum next Saturday, it will 100% be Adesanya Whittaker. There's no doubt about it. That is 100% the way they'll go.
Yeah. But he won a decision against Till. That wasn't all right. Fair enough. It was an exciting fight, but it was still a decision if you're looking at it on paper.
No, I'm not. I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't disagree. Like if they booked Adesanya Vettori, I wouldn't hate it. Like as a fan of the sport, I wouldn't hate it. But I just know that Dana's gonna be like, nah, we're gonna have to do somebody else here. We're gonna have to do Whittaker. Maybe even we hold off till Till comes back. They'll just find a way of not giving Vettori the fight, I don't think. But maybe, that's just how I see it at the moment.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm getting PTSD from last week's episode.
Yeah. You're saying about backing them into a corner. And I think if you're looking at the top of the division, you're not going to have to back them into a corner because Vettori is going to be ready to fight before Whittaker, before Costa, before Cannonier, before Brunson, before all of these people. Vettori will be available to fight soon. And Adesanya has always said he wants to stay active as well. So I feel like that would be, the corner that the UFC will be put in is the fact that there is only one fighter available at that time, or you just leave the division to stagnate over so many months and not have any movement.
I suppose the problem is I just view him like Leon Edwards. That's my problem. I just feel like when the champ says I don't really want to fight you, then the UFC kind of listen in a weird kind of way. They're kind of like almost beholden to the champ at the time. And Kamaru Usman's kind of alluded to the fact that he doesn't want to fight Leon Edwards, but Leon Edwards, if he beats Nate Diaz, he's going to leave him with no choice but to fight him, And it's just the kind of same for Vettori. It just feels like he's doing really well at the moment. He's on a 4-fight winning streak and he's dominating people, but it feels like he's just constantly just not quite there. But I agree that he probably is there, but he just won't get it from the UFC. He won't get the seal of approval from them.
He's more likely to be a backup fighter for a title fight. The third guy they bring in, they weigh in before he fights for an actual title. As meritocracy would go, you would want Marvin to be in that title fight. If we were playing by the traditional handbook of the UFC and the way that they should book fights, but we live in such a vastly different era now, and these things unfortunately do count. And account against someone like Marvin Vettori, who doesn't maybe have the personality to bring in the numbers that a Darren Till is looking at. Even a Jared Cannonier, as unique and weird and quiet as Jared Cannonier is, I think his personality is something that really draws people in. They get intrigued by him. They see him with all these various stones, and they're like, "Are you Harry Potter or are you a fighter?" And it's a very confusing thing for most people. So I think that's why Jared Cannonier is someone that people look at and they go, okay, that's interesting. Obviously, Darren Till's social media presence kind of speaks for itself. He's such a popular figure on there. Even someone like Paulo Costa, who is very controversial, I would say, online. He's not someone that I follow personally, but I think a lot of people are interested in what he's got to say. And I think, unfortunately, alongside your fighting style and skills, style being, are you an aggressive fighter? Are you coming forward with the intent to finish? As well as who you are, socially, I think makes a big difference on the title fights you do get. And the positions that you get as the backup fighter, as opposed to being the guy in the title fight itself.
I would say as well, just quickly, if I was Vettori, I would look for the Till fight, because if you do beat Darren Till, then at that point, then you can go, well, Adesanya wanted to fight Till for the title, and I've just beaten him, so now I get the title fight. So that is probably the way to go for Vettori. Wait till Till's back. Fight Till. If you beat Till, you'll probably at that point then you can go to the UFC and go, and to Adesanya and go, well, the guy that you want to fight for the title, well, I've just beaten that guy and I've beaten him comfortably, so now it's my turn. That's the only way I see the door opening up for Vettori for the time being.
I completely disagree.
I agree.
No, I'm
Not again.
just playing. But no, it's something that we'll have to see the UFC kind of hash out over the next coming weeks. Obviously, Vettori's going to want to get back in there. We're going to have to see the condition of Darren Till. We're going to have to see where Cannonier's going. Obviously, we've got this great fight next week with Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. Obviously, that was supposed to be Paulo Costa, but I believe Paulo Costa had the flu, I believe was his excuse, and he couldn't cut weight, etc. But Paulo Costa, for me, is kind of this guy that we all just want to see get knocked out now with, you know, how he's carried himself around the whole coronavirus kind of pandemic thing, and how he was, you know, he said, oh, I just want to catch it really early so I can beat it and then I can carry on fighting. Very, very strange mentality to have, but I'm super excited to see the upcoming fights that we have over the next coming weeks. And obviously we've got the return of Bobby Knuckles next week as well. And I know you guys are super on the train with him as well. He's a long-standing fighter in the UFC, and he's just one of these kind of staples that he's just such a lovely guy as well. He just seems like such a genuine man and such a family man, as well as being a fantastic all-rounded skilled fighter as well. So if there's nothing else that we need to cap off, then we will sign off. Thank you very much for tuning into the Fight and Talk 2 channel with myself, the eloquent analyst, and George down in Casual Corner. As Prath is pointing out, we have some merchandise on the Etsy, so I'll put the description below as well. I'm picking up some t-shirts tomorrow as well, because a lot of people have been asking for t-shirts, so they should be on the website, you know, shop by tomorrow as well, which is fantastic. You can catch us on Spotify. You can catch us on Google Podcasts if you've liked the content, as you can have a look at the other stuff that we've done. We do some topical pieces as well. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends if you're into MMA. And if people are not into MMA, share it anyway, because another MMA fan is always good. But guys, thank you very much, as always, for being a fantastic co-host. And we will be back with the pre-show for the fight next week with Robert Whittaker and Kelvin Gastelum. Thank you very much.